What's up everyone, it's me Namejamie, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the infamous Duel Arena. Now there's been a talk about removing the Sand Casino in recent times, and I want to sort of display both sides of the argument and give my take on the whole thing. Now, I would like to start by saying that I'm not really affiliated with either side in this debate. As you can see, I've done a bit of staking myself, and I've walked home a rich man, and I've definitely walked home a poor man. And because of that, I don't really have strong feelings either way in this debate, but I do love analyzing arguments for their soundness and validity, so I thought I'd give my 2 cents on the topic as a whole. However, before we hop into the video itself, I would like to say that I put a lot of effort into these videos, so if you enjoy the content, remember to subscribe. Currently about 96% of you guys are subscribed, which is down from 98, so thank you for that. And remember that subscribing is free and it does mean a lot to me, so if you feel like supporting me, remember to head down below. Now, what is the Duel Arena? This on its face is a very simple question, but this question actually has a rather complicated answer, and it is important to go over and define terms prior to going into a debate. For some, the Duel Arena is a place of skilled tribrid deathmatching. For more nefarious types, it's a place where you can con a noob into getting shot to death by a maple shortbow. But for the vast majority, I find that it's a place of luck to double your bank through games of chance such as whip staking, DDS staking, and boxing. And because of this, I think the last description fits the majority of people's perception of the Duel Arena, and more importantly, action taken at the Duel Arena. So it's going to be the definition / description of the Duel Arena this video hopes to cover and argue for and against. Now, let's get into argument number 1. This argument states that the Duel Arena stops inflation in the game through the tax it implements on stakes. This argument is obviously pro-Duel Arena, and it's actually overall pretty true. As of about February 2020, Jagex said the amount of wealth the Duel Arena has removed from the game is about 17.5 trillion GP, which they said has had significant impacts on the rate of GP inflation. Now, most people view a low, stable level of inflation as a good thing for the overall economy, and as an economist IRL, I am fully behind this point. Meaning that this point in my eyes for the Duel Arena is very strong. In terms of strength of argument, I give this argument a 5 out of 5. However, with that being said, I think the rebuttal argument is basically as strong of an argument, and that is that if we remove the Duel Arena because of its other negative side effects, which we will get into in later arguments, a GE tax could be implemented which would be as effective. Now, I'm not saying that I'm in favor of a GE tax or that I want it implemented in the game, but for the sake of the argument, let's just take a look at the statistics. Now, according to Jagex, about 5.250 trillion GP is traded per day on the Grand Exchange, meaning that over the course of a year, about 2 quadrillion GP is traded on the Grand Exchange. Now, a 1% tax on the total GP traded in that year would be 19 trillion alone, meaning that in a single year, about a 1% tax on the GE could remove 2 trillion more GP than the Duel Arena tax was able to remove in 1.5 years. Now, I'm not saying the tax on the GE would have to be implemented at a 1% level on everything, or how it would work in reality at all. But what I'm simply examining and trying to say is that the GE could effectively easily remove as much or more GP than the Duel Arena tax, making the rebuttal to this argument very strong as well. Meaning that I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 as well in terms of strength. Now, let's get into argument number 2, which is another argument in favor of the Duel Arena, and that is why control people's behavior in an MMO. You see, typically players like to choose their own path and enjoy the game how they see fit. I hear this argument a lot, especially on forums of Reddit or other forms of conversation, and it usually manifests itself something like this. I don't care about removing the Duel Arena because I don't like the Duel Arena, and since I don't like it, I don't partake in it, so it doesn't affect me at all. So why should I care about removing it? And on the surface, I can see why this argument is very appealing. It is very much an each to their own argument that allows the individual to enjoy the game how they see fit. So for instance, if you want to LARP around as a goblin and lumberjacks, that's fine. Or say you want to get freaky in your player-owned house with your GF that you bought at the GE, that's also cool. Because while I may not enjoy, or frankly respect what you're doing, it doesn't affect me and I can stick to PvE or PvP or whatever I enjoy doing within the game. Now, while this argument can be good in certain situations, such as allowing people to form bone running CCs or essence running CCs or we do raids discords or clans or so forth, it is overall a massively flawed argument I find, because it can be used too generally to defend things that are indefensible. I think this line of thought actually applies here, and you'll see more why this is when we go into the rebuttal, but for now I'm going to give this argument an overall 2.5 out of 5 in terms of strength. Now, let's go over the rebuttal, which is very important to this, each to their own argument. And the rebuttal states that we in Jagex already control people's behaviors a lot in game, you just might not realize it. A great example that is super analogous in my opinion and that ties in directly with the Duel Arena is dicing and flower betting. Now, for many of you, you may not remember this, but for my OG players like myself who were there on day one, you should remember this site well. This flower is a product of an item called the Mithril Seed Pod, and it was an infamous tool back in the day, especially in the late RS2 period and first few weeks of OSRS, that allowed players to plant different colored flowers. People would gamble on these flowers using trusted gambling CCs to either double their money or lose it all, very much like a whip stake functions in OSRS today. Now, the reason the flower in this clip is that I just showed you is multicolored is because Jagex, within the first few weeks of the game, took unpulled action to remove the colored flowers from the game, instead replacing them with this multicolored version we have today. This action was coupled with Jagex's statement that essentially said they would be banning anyone who runs or participates in a CC gambling game, such as dicing or other forms of flower. Now, this is important because there's arguably very little to no difference between that and the Duel Arena we have today. And this point is central to the rebuttal, because if you support the Duel Arena using the previous argument, you should be furious at Jagex for removing flowering and other forms of gambling through unpulled action. Additionally, you should be advocating for the re-implementation of flowering or other forms of CC betting. However, I don't know / haven't seen literally anyone ever suggest this update to Jagex in the last 4 to 5 years, and even if people have, I cannot imagine it being received well by the community at all today. And this leads to the conclusion of the rebuttal, and that is that I think a majority of players are happy we removed flowering, especially at the time Jagex took the stance, and more importantly, today I think a majority of people don't want it back. Which leads me to believe that people given enough time, or even today, would feel the same about the Duel Arena. Because think about it, both things are a form of 50-50 winner-take-all gambling, filled to the brim with scammers, heavily associated with RWT, and an activity that can make a billionaire have nothing in seconds. I fundamentally can literally not think of a single thing that is different between the two, except that flower CC betting usually took place in a CC and not a formal arena like the Duel Arena does. And is that difference really enough to disregard this argument? I would say a hard no. And because of that, I give this argument a 4.5 out of 5 in terms of strength. Now, let's get into argument number 3, which is the first argument to be levied against the Duel Arena, and that is that it causes people to quit the game. This argument stems from the psychological understanding that it's much easier to quit things when you don't have an emotional attachment to them. And what easier way to get rid of your emotional attachment to the game than chucking thousands of hours of work down the drain at the Duel Arena? Now, although this point I think is pretty well documented and pretty convincing, the amount of players this affects seems little. Additionally, the fact that your account has intrinsic value within its stats, which most people likely train to initially get the GP, means that there will never be no emotional connection to your account. Because I would argue people have more emotional connection to their account than the amount of GP that sits on that account. So with this in mind, I give this argument a 2 out of 5 in terms of strength. Now, the rebuttal to this argument is that these people would have quit the game anyways. I think this argument may be valid sometimes when you have that person who just doesn't care anymore, liquidates all their arguments, and heads to the Duel Arena, because it seems like that person was on their way out anyways. But I would push back a little bit against this rebuttal and in favor of the original argument, because how many friends do we have who just can't control themselves and chuck a few mil? And next thing you know, that a few mil is a few hundred mil, which is all of their bank. And now they have no money, no drive to climb back to where they were in the game, and either they RWT and buy gold to get back where they were, or they quit. And I would argue that these people fundamentally wouldn't have quit had there not been an outlet like the Duel Arena where they can toss hundreds of mil without anything in return. And because of this, I give this argument a 1.5 out of 5 in terms of strength. Now, argument number 4 actually picks up near where we left off with the rebuttal of argument number 3. And it's another argument against the Duel Arena, and it is the fact that the Duel Arena encourages unhealthy behavior and frankly addiction. You see, gambling is an addicting activity and we all know that. Hence why in real life there's an age requirement in most places to be able to participate in it. However, RuneScape does not have an age limit to play, so essentially you are introducing gambling to some young players in a rather irresponsible fashion. And this is sort of just the tip of the iceberg. If you look at Twitch, it looks like the majority of bad publicity that comes from the OSRS section comes in 2 forms. Fake phishing streams that offer double XP and other events, and the toxicity / pitifulness / shame of debt streamers and other behaviors associated with the Duel Arena. This fact, in my opinion, serves to bolden this argument when one of the 2 major forms of negative publicity / drama for the game comes from this legal action within the game. Since phishing, which is the other form of shame, is clearly not allowed or embraced by JAGX. Furthermore, this argument can be seen in other games too, especially games that have loot boxes, which have come under fire not only ethically but legally recently. Sort of supporting the fact that maybe allowing unfettered access to the Duel Arena does cause real harm and negative behavior from an aspect of the game that may not need to exist. And because of that, I give this argument a 3 out of 5 in terms of strength. Now, the rebuttal to this argument I usually hear is that it's the parents or the individual's responsibility to curb that bad behavior. I find this argument anecdotal and logically false, and also lazy thinking. Not only did I not have parents who knew the full extent to which I was doing things online, I don't know any parents who do. And I live in a very white, wealthy town where the parents are like helicopter parents to the max. And even then, they don't probe their kid's life like that. Additionally, I find that this assumption makes a fundamental misunderstanding about addiction and the role logical free will choice makes in that addiction. Overall, I think it's a fantastical idea of thinking or way of thinking to think that parents are not only going to investigate OSRS, which is 99% a game that's fine for their kids, to find the 0.01%, which is the Duel Arena, which is questionable for them. Additionally, even if it is the parents' responsibility, the action for years has still been occurring, so blaming the parents does nothing to solve the problem, all it does is point the finger. And because of that, I give this argument a 0 out of 5, which is the first on this list. Now, argument number 5 is the last argument on our list, and again, it's against the Duel Arena. And it has to do with the association the Duel Arena has with RWTing. I think at this point we all know the Duel Arena is heavily tied to RWTing simply due to the volume of gold being exchanged there and the manner in which that gold is being exchanged. This problem of RWTing plagues RuneScape at the legal level by establishing its currency for a real world value, the integrity level by ruining the game / devaluing the items and stuff for other players, and at the consistency level where they took action against flowering and dicing for this exact reason, but for some reason failed to apply this logic to staking. Without going into too much detail, because this point has a lot of avenues to it and a lot of different evidence that all can't be covered here, I think the point overall is pretty well established and supported, and because of that, I'm going to give this argument around a 3 out of 5 in terms of strength. The rebuttal to this is the exact same as the one before, which is usually that it falls in the individual's responsibility. And while yes, here I think that argument is much more valid, because at the end of the day, if people stop selling gold and people stop buying gold, there would be no RWTing, since supply and demand ultimately drive the black market. Like the previous rebuttal, This simple mantra has not stopped RWTing, and it definitely hasn't even done anything to even slow it down. So again, like the previous rebuttal, I find it weak because although you may be correct in addressing the blame part of the argument, you fail to provide even remotely close to a solution, and because of that, I give this argument a 1 out of 5 in terms of strength. In conclusion, I think the pro removal side of the argument actually has stronger arguments than the keep side of the Duel Arena arguments at the moment, although I did not cover every single argument on either side. So if you can think of a really convincing argument, let me know down in the comment section in a civil manner. Additionally, while you're down there, remember to like and subscribe. Also, feel free to join the Discord, which is in the description. We currently only have a couple handful of members, but we're always looking for more in order to start doing some community events. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and remember, my name is Jamie, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace! I do it for the love.